G'day, I'm Nurchin, and this is the, What the? Oh god, it's the Mongolian Death Worm! So you're travelling through the Gobi Desert in the peak of summer when your horse drops dead instantly. You scramble to your feet and in front of you a thick red sausage is sticking out of the ground. But what is it? It's known by the natives as Alhoi korokoi, which translates to intestine worm due to its appearance looking like the intestine of a cattle full of blood. When explorers from the west heard about it, they thought that name definitely wasn't cool enough and they called it the Mongolian Death Worm. And when it comes to explorers, none knew the death worm quite like Ivan McCurl, who led expeditions in 1990 and 1992 to the Gobi Desert. The findings of these books were published in the book In Search of the Killer Worm of Mongolia. Later on, his notes were published by Karl Shuker in the book Beasts That Hide from Man. But what was this worm exactly? While there are many theories, this excerpt from Ivan's book summarizes the creature thoroughly. Sausage-like worm over half a meter long and thick as a man's arm. Resembling the intestines of cattle, its tail is short as if it were cut off, but not tapered. It is difficult to tell its head from its tail because it has no visible eyes, nostrils, or mouth. Its color is dark red, like blood, or salami. It moves in odd ways, either it rolls around or it squirms sideways, sweeping its way about. It lives in desolate sand dunes and in the hot valleys of the Gobi Desert, with sexual plants underground. It is possible to see it only during the hottest months of the year, June and July. It later burrows into the sand and sleeps. It gets out on top of the ground mainly after rain when the ground is wet. It is dangerous because it can kill people and animals instantly at a range of several meters. Damn, that's a lot of information. But keep in mind, Ivan actually never found a Mongolian death worm. All of his evidence was anecdotal from traveling nomadic tribesmen. And he tried some pretty extreme stuff. In 1990, he tried to build a thumper by slapping a log into the sand over and over again, hoping to lure it out. This was inspired by Frank Herbert's 1965 sci-fi novel, Dune. In 1992, he gave up on trying to whack a pack of the Gobi Desert and just started blowing stuff up. I see where he was coming from, but I don't think there's an animal alive that would sense an explosion and head towards it. Maybe that's just one too many sci-fi novels for old Ivan. The worm could supposedly be found near saxaul plants, or more importantly, Cynomorium songaricum, locally known as goyo plants. These goyo plants are cigar-shaped, poisonous, parasitic, and they lived on the roots of the saxaul plant. The goyo plant supposedly tasted like celery and unripe bananas. Moment of silence for the brave soul who discovered this. So you may be thinking, stop talking about gyozas and old scientists. You can't mention a several meter kill range and just ignore it. Don't worm tease me like that. Well, this little sausage actually carries quite the arsenal, so let's break it down. The Mongolian death worm can supposedly kill you by poison, acid, electrocution, touch, and biting. When it reaches out of the ground, it can apparently swell up like a balloon and shoot forward a jet of corrosive poison that can kill you instantly. Instantly. If you know how poison works, that probably doesn't sound right. Poison needs to enter the body to work. So maybe the corrosive nature makes it burn through the skin, or maybe the worm just targets the eyes. It's supposedly so poisonous you will die from just touching it. Instantly again. But then there are those who think that it's electrocution. Ivan's translator told of a story where on a previous expedition a geologist had accidentally poked one with a metal rod and died instantly. Some people said it is just that poisonous. Others said it was probably electrocution. Anyway, the death worm's first published reference was in 1926 in the book On the Trail of Ancient Man. This book was written by Professor Roy Chapman Andrews when he was warned about the creature by the Premier of Mongolia. There were also supposedly important documents on the creature lost in 1930 when Soviet scientist A.D. Simakov was taken to the Gulag. And we're not talking about fictional graboids and sandworms and purple worms, we're talking about the OG Mongolian death worm. Unlike this guy's spunk, maybe when the human race inevitably destroys itself, he can come out on top as the alpha predator. But first we have to ask the question, is it real? First, is it a worm? Probably not. The Gobi Desert is probably the worst, possible climate for a worm to survive in. They need moisture, and the goby has none. Without developing some kind of protection, a worm would dry up and die almost instantly. But there are some species of frog and toad that have developed techniques to survive in these harsh climates. Maybe the worm has done the same. After all, giant worm really ticks most of the boxes. Meet the Australian earthworm. If you've ever tried to pick up an earthworm, you'll know that they're very slimy and don't like being touched. What this guy can do as a defense mechanism is swell up and squirt out excess fluid. Yes, now my search history contains the word squirting worm. That's not what I wanted to see. So, considering this worm lives near poisonous plants, it could be ingesting them, which causes a reaction in the body, turning its otherwise harmless worm slime into a poisonous and possibly corrosive weapon. I mean, I think the corrosion part is a bit of a stretch. There are stories of it burning holes in truck tires and jeeps, but that could just be erosion caused by the desert. It's said to come out only during the hottest months. This really trips up any idea of it being a worm, but if it was only able to eat a certain part of the goyo plant, it could explain its timeable occurrence. I don't think timeable is a word. It's also said that its poison isn't as potent in late July. This may be due to a change in the goyo plants, or it was never poisonous, and the not always fatal part kind of saves the superstition. So worms can dig, they can spit, they can sense movement through the ground, and they can get pretty dang big. But without water, a worm probably can't live in the Gobi Desert. Then again, the word worm has been used to incorrectly describe animals for thousands of years, so maybe it doesn't mean literally a worm. Legless lizards, snakes, fish, insects have all been referred to as worms in the past, so let's scale up and keep looking. Meet the Sicilian, fossorial amphibian that can grow up to 1.5 meters.
Because they're subterranean, it's very rare to ever come across them, so it's tough for research teams to find them. You could spend months digging in the jungle, and you literally have to be in the right place at the right time to come across one.
Or the worm lizard, another family of reptiles full of death worm lookalikes, such as the Mexican mole lizard that lives right on the line between cute and horrifying. Little hands. A misidentification like these would explain some of the less worm-like traits of the death worm. Species like these can live in harsh climates by digging deep beneath the sand, but they aren't poisonous. The Sicilian excretes a toxic mucus that helps it navigate, but nothing compared to the instant death of the death worm. I think we'll need a few less legs and a whole lot more venom. Meet the horned adder. This guy is extremely dangerous and burrows into the ground to wait for its prey. And meet the spitting cobra, the world's most favourite spitting serpent. These are all behaviours that may point to the death worm being a snake. But I think I know the difference between a snake or a worm. Oh really? Apacha! This is the Eryx sandboa. This snake digs, it lives all over the globe, and it looks like a giant earthworm. Ew! When asked about the Mongolian death worm, herpetologist and snake handler Mark O'Shea believes it could have been a species of Eryx sandboa. Some boas can actually move like worms when they reach a tight fit, but unfortunately, they're not venomous like we were hoping. But there are always new species of snake being found, some of them being insanely venomous. Unfortunately, the most venomous snake in the world, the inland taipan, still takes about half an hour to kill a human, not the instant death like we've seen with this worm. Unless... Don't think that I forgot that this worm holds the power of the gods, or more exactly, the power of electricity. There are only a select few species on Earth with electric organs. It's often used as a sensory thing, but in some cases it can be used to attack. Famously, the electric eel and the electric ray. But unfortunately, all cases of it being used as a weapon occur in water. The problem with sand is that it isn't exactly conductive. The death worm would have to store some serious wattage if it wanted to kill someone, let alone at a distance. Another theory is that the earthworm stores electricity built by friction in its body. For example, a rattlesnake tail actually builds a charge when it shakes, as a form of natural battery. This is called triboelectricity. So imagine the death worm zooming through the Gobi Desert in a pair of fluffy socks, and then he touches the metal rod of a geologist and zap. Either way, the electric eel is capable of causing heart failure, but without water and at a distance, I think we can chalk its electric prowess up to superstition. So what are my thoughts? Well, a creature without a skeleton, it's not surprising we've never found any fossils. We'd have to rely on anecdotal evidence, and in which case, we've got it in spades. And if you believe the words of the nomads, it's not surprising no one's ever tried to catch one of these things. I do think the electric abilities are superstition, and the instant poisoning unlikely. But I think at least a version of the Mongolian Death Worm may have or still does exist.
But we haven't found one.
I get that, but a couple of guys heading into the desert to find a worm is like heading into the rainforest to find a single ant. Either way, I think the Mongolian Death Worm is very cool, and it has my #1 vote after the fall of man. But if you can't wait till then to meet the Mongolian Death Worm, I happen to know a man who wouldn't let 1.2 million square kilometers of sand get in between him and a good hunt. I am of course talking about Wendell Elmwood. Over to you, Wendell.
Thank you, Nurchin, and hail and well met to my fellow crypto enthusiasts. Today we've travelled to the Gobi Desert in search for the Mongolian Death Worm. Now, the Gobi is a cold desert, but during summer it can reach 45 degrees, so let's try and make this one quick. Now, there's a rumour that the Mongolian Death Worm is attracted to the colour yellow, but it lives underground. It doesn't even have eyes. That's just lazy research. My word, it's hot out here. Whew. Now, if you're looking for the Mongolian Death Worm, here's what you must remember. Search the Gobi Desert and the borders of China and Mongolia. Wait till the hottest days and then look after it's rained. Search for saxul and goyo plants. And don't forget, it's very dangerous, so bring some protection. Oh, some poor sod's dropped his salami on the ground. Oh, actually, my word, it's the Mongolian Death Worm. Would you look at that? I guess that just really goes to show that I really am the world's greatest cryptozoologist. I think it just sneezed on me.
Thanks for watching. If you liked, be sure to smash that like and subscribe, and follow me on Instagram and Twitter. And don't forget to check out my new channel where I'm going to be putting my streams and content that doesn't really fit here. Catch you next time.